Testing, testing. How far back does it pick me up? Is it okay here?
Yeah, no, perfect.
Yeah?
I'm going to be about the same distance as well, so it should sound pretty comparable.
Okay.
And then that's recording. Yeah, I couldn't get this one to be like not right in front of my face, so it's kind of like here. But
Yeah, these microphones are also a bit fucky. I've tried to record in here a whole bunch, and it's always a bit of a mess. But anyway,
we're making it work.
Making it work, man.
All right, let's just flow straight into it. Seven, welcome, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, dude. I'm excited to dig into it. The first thing I wanted to speak about that really kind of stood out to me when I was looking through your website and your brand and stuff was the word self-doubt. And the reason it really stood out to me is because I think that that's something that so many people struggle with. Specifically, you mentioned on your website you work with professionals and people in business that are trying to overcome self-doubt. But I really wanted to dig into that. I think that's a really interesting like a paradigm that people face in life. Where do you think, first of all, I guess, where do you think self-doubt comes from for people?
I'm going to flip the question back around to you. Where does your self-doubt come from?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's a lot of it is related to like my childhood and my teenage years. I think specifically in the schooling system and playing like competitive sports and having siblings and kind of being this kind of competitive thing, there was always a feeling of I have to be good enough at this specific thing to be worthy of getting love or validation from people.
Right.
So I think that was probably like the roots of it, I would say.
Now, what does good enough mean?
I guess it would be like, in terms of like measurements, let's say it's school, right? Like the top grade would be like in the UK it was A star, right? So I guess it would always be that, like, but even then it's, if you got an A star, it'd be like why haven't you got the extra 5 marks to get 100 out of 100 instead of 95 out of 100? And I think that's the interesting thing about it is it's like a carrot on a stick. Like you're never going to get there. You're never going to get to this good enough. But I think it's like illusory because the good enough is never going to be good enough until you feel good enough.
You use the key word there, illusory, illusion. There's a beautiful couple of books by an author named Don Miguel, who writes The Four Agreements, which is a pretty popular book. I've read one of his other books, which is probably a little bit less well known. And he outlines the idea that everything that we feel, every emotion, is the truth. Because we feel it here and now in the present moment, and the now is the only thing that really exists. In the now, what am I feeling? That is the truth, because no one can deny me that. Right now I feel a bit anxious, or I feel really empowered, I feel excited, I feel joy, I feel a bit down. These are truths in that moment. Therefore, anything that the mind comes up with, any of the storylines of the mind, the narratives we create, are lies. When we talk about being good enough is descriptive language that the ego uses to convince you that something isn't okay, to keep you feeling the way you're feeling now. So let me back up, because to understand self-doubt, we need to understand why there would be any point in us doubting ourselves in the first place. Okay, human beings are these incredible beings of evolution, right? If we didn't need something, evolution would have gotten rid of it. We wouldn't have it anymore. So emotions and thought patterns such as I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I should doubt myself, these are natural, helpful, and healthy to an extent, in the sense that if at no point had they ever served us, we wouldn't have them. So this isn't about judging those unhelpful or those challenging emotions or experiences or narratives when they come up. It's about looking at them with awareness, okay? when we look really closely at self-doubt, when we look really closely at these narratives, these storylines of the mind with love, with compassion, we start to ask ourselves, why did these come up? Why did this help me? Why does it help me to think or feel that I'm not good enough? And then what often happens is people will start to go back to a time when they felt that way, when they first felt that way. So a little bit of a tangent, but bear with me on this because I think it's really fascinating. So I'm a hypnotherapist, and often what we're seeing when we're learning hypnotherapy is really incredible examples of where physical diseases or challenges, issues in the body were created by the mind. Do you know what Crohn's disease is?
I know friends who have Crohn disease.
Okay. So there's a brilliant story I learned when I was doing my training. The man who trained the person who trained me, so this is decades ago, this goes back decades ago, and he was working with a man who had Crohn's disease. And they started to do essentially what you actually just started with. You jumped straight into a recognition of the childhood and going back to a childhood moment. And going through the hypnosis process, this guy was leading him through being deeply in a state of trance, and he was asked the question that I love asking, which was something along the lines of, and I'm going to tell you a number, and this number is going to be the answer to when you first felt this way and when this pattern first started. And you don't need to think too much about this number. As soon as I ask the question, the number is going to appear just like that in your mind. And the question is, how old were you when this first started? And usually what happens is someone says an age between 3 and 12. Usually it's somewhere around that like 8-ish, 6, 7, 8-ish mark, because that's when the brain grows to the point of individuation. That's when the brain starts being able to see ourselves as separate from others, and the ego starts to develop. Before that, it's really just like, everything is me, which is why a child might scream if you take the toy away, because they think you're taking themselves away. It's a bit of this like the way we relate when we're under that age. But by that point, we've started to develop into our own individual human. So by then, something has usually happened or happens around then. For this man with Crohn's disease, he went back to this memory. He described a time he did something silly. He stole a candy bar from a shop or whatever, something that wasn't really that big of a deal for a little kid at that time, whatever. But his mom was really angry at him. And his mom scolded him and wagged her finger and said, "You've been such a bad boy. That should eat you up inside." And then he developed a disease, Crohn's disease, which eats you up inside. It's like the stomach is trying to eat itself up, which is why Crohn's makes it so hard for you to digest food. Lots of things are happening there. There's a saying, disease is dis-ease. And there's some dis-ease in the mind, in the body, or in the emotional state that keeps us diseased. Now that's really tough to tell someone with a chronic disease, and so I wouldn't ever say that that's because of your own, but, right? This awareness that the body has the power to create something that powerful. And interestingly, this Crohn's disease is considered incurable. But after going through this process, guess what happened? It went away. So something really interesting happens when we explore why the ego creates the situation it creates and all of the effects of that. So to go back to self-doubt and to talk about where the ego is kind of coming from. The ego is really interesting because at that point of individuation, to keep us alive, to keep us operating in the physical world, and I would argue, because I'm a fairly spiritual person, to help give us a sense of separate identity, that is part of the human experience. The ego is sort of birthed. The ego is really interesting because, again, it isn't good or bad. It's, a Jungian psychologist would argue it's simply your identity. The challenge becomes when that identity takes on a life of its own, and because it's a life of its own, it wants to keep itself safe. That is to the ego, keeping itself safe is the same as keeping you safe. Now the challenge is that the ego, because it wants to keep itself safe, it wants to keep itself the same. The ego is this really interesting beast because the ego doesn't differentiate between good or bad. It differentiates between same or different. So the ego wants you to stay the same. The same could look like, I have awful depression, I can't get out of bed in the morning, I can't land or hold down a job, I'm not able to help anyone, I feel like shit, I've got this disease, I've got whatever. The same could look like a whole suite of awful challenges, of really tough challenges. And the ego wants to keep it the same. Because the same equals safe, because change is the unknown. If I step out of the village and there might be a bear attacking me, that's fear of the unknown. The ego says, no, 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 let's stay the same, because that keeps us safe. So self-doubt is a mechanism of the ego. The ego needs these lies, these storylines of the mind that aren't how we're feeling, but things we use to justify how we're feeling, so that we stay the same, because that it perceives staying the same as safe. I really want to stay safe. I really want to keep things exactly as they are. You think things are terrible? They're going to be worse, so you should doubt yourself. So keep doubting yourself. Self-doubt comes in. Self-doubt remains for long enough and becomes tied to these emotive, illustrative words, right? I'm not good enough. I'm debilitated. These people don't like me. It starts creating narratives that you don't necessarily have proof for, or you think you have proof, but really the narrative is creating more of the proof than you have actual real proof in physical real life. And so what happens is the ego takes a hold of this and it becomes a spiral. It becomes a cycle. And a cycle can only be broken from within. And that's when the real work begins, is where do you break the cycle from within? Self-doubt, in short, is a mechanism of the ego, and that exists to keep you safe and to help you. And your job, when you want to live your most empowered life, when you realize your fullest potential is on the other side of of whatever you're stuck with right now, the first thing to do is look at where the ego is keeping you held down. And if I could share one more thing, it's the reason why it is so important to understand when the ego is in the driver's seat, or when your true essential self is in the driver's seat, and to take action on that, is because everything that is life is change, right? The ego wants everything to stay the same. But think about everything that we deem to be life: evolution, nature, the birth of a child, the cycle of life. It requires constant change. Constant change all the time. When we go through that process of change, that is when we are truly embodying life. Now, what is the opposite of change? Stagnation. So if life is change, then it is death that is stagnation. The ego would keep us stagnating because that's what it deems as safe. And it is so desperately trying to keep us safe because the ego is unable to differentiate between its death and your physical death. The ego goes, if I go through this ego death, it's like I'm really dying. Oh no, I might get stabbed or something, which is totally untrue, because actually all growth is ego death. Every time you believe something new about yourself, you've gone through some level of ego death. So the ego growth is constant cycle of ego death. And yet, when it comes to something really deep, really sticky, something that sat with us for as long as that 8-year-old boy who developed Crohn's disease, as long as you immediately were able to flash back, right, to a memory of your childhood, when it's been with us that long, that's a layer, that's a depth of ego death that can shake us to our very core. It's not a small ego death, it's a huge cycle, a huge layer that an even more incredible person is always on the other side of, waiting, right? Our truest self is always on the other side, waiting for us to remember them, re-remember them, discover them, step into them, and become them. And that's when life in stages unlocks, because life is change. So self-doubt is a mechanism to keep us from changing, man. And it's natural, so it's not something to judge. Yet when we recognize it, that's a call to action.
And so once you've recognized the self-doubt, because I know at the beginning you said it's observing and becoming aware of it, what do you think is practically the next step for somebody to, so let's say they really struggle with self-doubt all the time, and hearing your insights, they realize, okay, it's something within myself that's trying to keep me safe, that's trying to protect me. Let me just observe that, let me sit with that. What do you think is the next step of action? Like you said, the call to action. What is that action step that people need to take?
So I've got a framework that I call AIDE. AIDE. AIDE is the framework and the step that I use with clients. It's a part of the methodology that I designed to help us figure out what action we should take. Because there's, if I can sort of tangent for a sec, it's easy to fall into the trap of, here's your specific list of things, go do this list. Action, 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 with no context and no self-love. That is letting the masculine totally take control. At the same time, it can be tempting, because it's quite comforting, to go, love yourself, feel positive towards yourself, and then the action isn't always there when we do stuff like that. And then the feminine is on its own too in charge. It's the balance of both working together that creates real change. So this divine masculine, divine feminine, we all have both within us. And recognizing that, that's really important to me. So I decided to create a framework that kind of allowed for both in a constant cycle. I talk about cycles a lot. I'll come back to why in a moment. So AIDE, A-I-D-E, stands for A, awareness. That's the piece we've discussed already, okay? To change something, you must be aware of it. Otherwise, you're shooting in the dark. You don't know. It is a non-starter. You don't know what you're looking at. Once you have awareness, now you know the thing you want to make an impact on or to change. I is intentionality. D is directionality. And E is emotionality. And those are all whole topics in and of themselves. To answer your question, intentionality and directionality become the next things that we need to work on. Intentionality is, what do I want instead? What do I want instead of what I've currently got? And then directionality is, you look at the possible actions that would achieve that intention, and you just start. Right? I've worked in and around entrepreneurship my whole life, and it can be really tempting to spend weeks and weeks and weeks researching a market and not acting. And some of my favorite entrepreneurship stories are when people basically did the thing that made no sense, that was really manual, and gave them a lot of information, and then evolved using that information. There's a great story that I think comes out of the Lean Startup, which is one of the kind of the most quintessential entrepreneurship books, and the author describes a startup where it was like a food delivery app, like one of these, Deliveroo or whatever, in Silicon Valley. What they did was, instead of going and building an app, they found one target user, which was like a busy mom of 2 or 3 kids or whatever, and said to her, give me your grocery list, I will go do the shopping for you, I'll come back, and you just give me the check. All totally manual process. He went out, did that, came back, she took the check, he took a whole bunch of notes about the process. Then he multiplied that until he had no time left in his calendar. Maybe it was both co-founders, until they had no time left in their calendar. Only then did they decide they had enough information about the process to start building their app, because they had manually gone through it. And similarly, directionality is all about incremental testing. Well, here's one big plan, and I'm going to be a totally different person afterwards, is such a tempting thing to say. It's like fun. It's like, ooh. And then you wake up the next day, and you still feel the same, so you do the same things, and you're like, okay, I'll start tomorrow. And a week has gone by. You're the same person. Now you've forgotten about it because you lost all the momentum. Intentionality sets something very specific about what you want next, and then directionality is choose a direction and just get started so that you build up proof that you're becoming the new person that you claim you want to be. I think if we dive into intentionality a little bit more, that might help as well. So intentionality is interesting because we hear a lot, set an intention. What's your intention going into something? Sometimes the intention can be as simple as, I want a bit of a new life. I want to feel better. Sometimes it can be really specific, though. It can be really broad like that. It can be really specific. It can be, I want to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning. Okay. Directionality. How are you going to do this? And then you'll start to put in little actions. Do you set an alarm? Do you go to bed earlier? Why is your sleep not great currently? You can keep the ball rolling and figure it out. All directionality is predetermined by intentionality. It is almost impossible to consciously set a direction and follow it without the intention to do so. Imagine you're at a crossroads, right? You're in the middle of a crossroads. You can go in two directions. Do you go left or do you go right? And if you had been walking down that path, totally zoned out, you might have missed that there were two paths, just kept walking and walked into a tree.
Right.
Or walked off into the forest and gotten mauled by a bear or something. I don't know. I really like these visual descriptions, but without the intentionality, there is no directionality. You just keep wandering forward. That's when you're in a space of total reactivity. And it is a confident state and confident action in a new direction that helps wake you up from that sort of fever dream of reactivity and move into proactivity. Now, confidence is not something that's sort of easily won necessarily. There's a beautiful quote someone mentioned to me on my podcast over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. She said to me, "You can feel really unconfident and still do a courageous thing." And that is the difference between what confidence and courage are. Courage is action. Confidence is the feeling, which comes through a number of ways, often through feeling in flow, feeling like you know what you're doing. There are multiple ways we can do that. As a hypnotherapist, I would go through changing someone's state, getting someone into an emotional state that really helps, is a state of confidence where you feel very competent. It's also something where if you build up enough proof, enough action, where you've shown yourself, you no longer have reason to doubt yourself, right? Self-doubt would fall away because you've seen you can successfully do it, right? I doubted myself loads until I saw the transformation I was able to make for clients. And I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this, you know? And it started to feel better. And so it is really all about the way we take courageous action until we have felt confident enough to keep it going. So awareness, intentionality, directionality, and now we get to the E. E is emotionality. Emotionality is the catalyst. Emotionality is how we move more quickly or more slowly down this direction we have chosen, right? So again, if we take the walking through a forest, coming to a crossroads metaphor, awareness is being conscious of where you are. Intentionality is deciding to stop and choose a specific direction. Directionality is going down that direction, consciously taking one step after the other down this new direction. And emotionality is your speed. It can be the catalyst. It can also slow you down. If your emotional state is one where you are in survival mode, you are going to be going more slowly. If your emotional state is one where you're in creation mode, then you can really speed up and you can achieve whatever this awareness that you've set out, right? Whatever the goal is, where the awareness is, you can achieve that much more quickly. So let me outline what I mean by survival and creation mode, okay? Survival mode is any emotional experience that exists to keep us alive, keep our physical body alive. Fear, anger, judgment, stress, lust, these things that exist for the physical body's needs, and they are totally valid, and they are very necessary for us, and we should have a lot of love for them. And at the same time, should they be consciously in the driver's seat all the time? And many of us now know probably not. So they aren't bad emotions. They're emotions that are quite often unhelpful. You'll never hear me judging them. Oh, that's so bad that I'm feeling angry right now. It's like, no, it comes up for a reason. but is it the most helpful right now? If not, take a deep breath and let it go. And instead move into creation mode. A creation mode emotion is basically any emotional state or experience that isn't a survival mode experience. Anything that doesn't just exist to keep your physical body alive. And primarily that is love, that is wholeness, that is excitement and passion for something that really puts you in flow, right? It's flow state. Joy, absolute joy. These are creation mode experiences. Creativity, right? Creation. You're in a place of creativity. You can create when you're in this space. Moving from survival into creation is the way we catalyze whatever goal we're working towards. That emotionality, how we feel as we're moving in this new direction, that is what really takes us to where we want to get to very, very quickly, or it can slow us down, right? If you're living in a state of fear, then you're like walking through the woods, scared something's gonna jump out at you. You're like, oh, what's going on? A twig just snapped. Oh wait, it was my own foot. And so we move very slowly down this new path we've chosen. It's very easy to go back to where we started because the ego wants to keep us safe. So you might even backtrack. If you're passionate, excited, you're in a place of love, you really envision the end goal and want to go for it, now you can go full steam ahead. Mm-hmm.
I love
exactly.
That. It seems like in today's day and age, a lot of what we see as the kind of pinnacle of success seems to be people that are living very much in survival. Like they've maybe come from a place in their life where they were really struggling, or they didn't feel like they had enough money or enough reputation or whatever, and they've used survival as like their fuel to get to the top. You know, the top of money making or fame or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to see how, if those people haven't done the self-reflection and the inner work to look at that and realize that maybe they're still in survival, even though they've got to where they want it to be and they haven't flipped yet, they might then propagate that kind of that belief or that mindset to all the people that they're promoting their ideologies to, writing books about. And I see that a lot on the internet. There'll be people giving out advice where they're basically just saying, live in survival and use that as your fuel. But I also find it interesting that some people have used that fuel for so long, and then haven't necessarily made the switch into creation. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know what your perspective is on that. Like, how can people switch fuels? Let's say somebody wants to lose weight because they've been, let's say, self-conscious about their body their whole life, and they've got to a point where they're like, they're pretty happy with their weight because they're not necessarily as self-conscious anymore, but they want to then feel good about their body, and they haven't got to that state of kind of, they're still in survival of judging themselves. How can people kind of flip that on their journey of transformation and change so that they can become into those states of creation instead?
So it's interesting that you talk about fuels. Our emotional states fall into one of two types of emotional fuel. Catabolic energy, which is energy that is unsustainable, destructive, and eats itself up from within. And anabolic energy that is fully sustainable, that comes from the infinite source of creation, so to speak, that is just keeping you in flow, in movement, accessible always. And that roughly maps onto survival and creation mode, right? Catabolic energy coming from that survival mode, anabolic energy coming from that creation mode. Both of them are energy. So you can have an immense amount of survival energy, and it can get you very far in the material world. I would caveat and say for some people. I actually don't think that works for many of us, which I'll get to in a minute. But we can use catabolic energy to achieve things in the short term, and then you can get used to doing that and kind of hack life, or sort of accidentally slip into creation a little bit, right? I'm originally fueled by anger and fear, but now I've started doing the task, and I'm actually enjoying the task. And so I kind of flip back and forth. Like Alex Hormozi is the first example that comes to mind. I respect the guy a lot. He's a very honest person. And it's also quite clear from watching certain interviews that he does, he feels like he doesn't know why he's quite doing what he's doing. It's like this unconscious drive to do it, and nothing bad has happened yet. But I'm immediately drawn to a story from is it Lewis Howes, one of the biggest podcasters. He was doing a book tour a few months back, on a bunch of podcasts, and he was telling this story of a time in his life where I think he was trying to make money. I could be getting it wrong, so citation needed. I think he was working as like a chauffeur or something in this really expensive building, like the most expensive building in the city he was in, something like that. So he shows up to work one day, most expensive building in the city. The apartments are ridiculous priced here, and the police are cordon the area off. And he goes, "What happened?" And someone said that someone had jumped. And the person who had jumped off the building, who ended it all, was worth like $500 million. So something's clearly not right. Now, we could look at that. On the surface, that's a story about, money isn't enough to make you happy, blah, blah, blah. If other things are challenging. I think that story teaches us a few things. One of them is that you can make all that money, and eventually you realize it is not enough. And that little voice in the head that says, you are not enough, might have been right. And there's nothing you can physically do. And that's not true. In that moment, it will feel that way. Why? Because you only know catabolic energy. And what's left? You either have to move into anabolic energy, or you move into survival mode, survival responses, fight, flight, or freeze. And that can take us to really extreme places when you're just so stuck and you don't know what to do. And there's all this stress and survival energy. When you have so much gift to give the world, and it just can't come out. You just don't know how to make it come out. And you feel stuck. And that stuckness can be a terrifying place. The only way to move from catabolic to anabolic energy is to move from creation mode, from survival mode into creation mode, right? Because those are fundamentally the experience is keeping you there. You can't just kind of will it. You can't hard work yourself into changing that energy source, because that is keeping you in that survival mode. And I think it's worth understanding that these thoughts, right? We have multiple versions of ourselves that exist within ourselves in parallel at any one time. Voices that say certain things to us or about us, that many of which, not all of them, exist to keep us in survival mode. We have our 8-year-old self that feels the way that you felt when you were younger, that we all felt when we were younger. We have our wise future self, the version of us in 10 years' time that knows it's all going to be okay. And we have many other versions, all existing at the same time. And some of those versions are what we would call saboteurs, sabotaging voices that exist as ego mechanisms, so therefore to keep us alive and seemingly to help us, yet they aren't our wisest self, and so are always going to be more limited. So an example in the story I just gave, which you alluded to with the way you asked this question, is a voice that says, it's a good thing that I'm so hard on myself, because look at all the success it's created. To which I would say, what if you could create all that success and more, and feel even better while you do it? Wouldn't you want that instead of what you've currently got? When the ego thinks that really angry or frustrated or wounded self that is acting from and therefore is catabolic energy, when the ego thinks that is the case and the ego doesn't want things to change, it's going to try to defend itself and go, no, this is what helped me. It's like, maybe so far it got you this material success. What if you could have even more? And both internally and externally, both emotionally and materially. And now we have the space to ask, in what way was I limiting myself? In what way have I been limited so far? And the answer is, when you're working from a saboteur, you're always limiting yourself in some way, shape, or form. Because all saboteurs, all sabotaging voices are using catabolic energy. So again, let's apply AIDE. Awareness, then intentionality, then directionality. First, what do you want instead of what you've currently got? This is actually part of that intentionality, that question. That's a classic hypnotherapy and coaching question. What do you want instead of what you've currently got? Because what we need to do is identify in the affirmative the thing we do want, and the sabotaging voice just uses these illustrative words like self-doubt, like not good enough. Another illustrative word is I have more, I'm successful. So if I really wanted to challenge the question you just gave me, I would say, well, what does success mean? And that sounds like an easy question to throw around because, like, society knows what success means. It means making some money. It means, good relationships. It means some level of fame, or it means whatever you want. Unfortunately, a lot of us actually don't know what we want. Many of us live in a constant state of, I don't want whatever discomfort I'm feeling right now, right? Now, the reason why I ask what do you want instead of what you've currently got is because we need to understand, if we're going to have our mind, body working together, our brain, our heart, our gut, all in sync, and be able to put conscious intention behind the action to create the life we really, really want, then we need to understand how the brain works, and therefore also how it doesn't work. I want you to do me a favor, Joe. Whatever I say, do not do what I'm about to ask you to do. Right? Don't do it. Just don't do it. Do not think about a purple elephant with a top hat and blue wings. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing the thing I told you not to do? You betrayed me. How could you do this to me? The brain can't think in negatives. It is impossible. The brain has to tell itself the thing to tell itself not to do the thing. So it has to go, this is it, and now stop. It can't think in an absence of. So many people, as a result, they will desire the absence of the thing they're currently thinking about. What do you want to feel? I don't want to be afraid. I don't want to hate public speaking. Because I'm a public speaking trainer, that's something I get a lot. I love moving people from hating the stage into loving the stage. How do I do that? By outlining to people, hey, what do you want instead of what you've currently got? Do you want to stop hating the stage, where you're going to be thinking about hating it and all the reasons you hate it? What do you want instead? Okay, I want to love being on there. Okay, now we're thinking in the positive. When we think in the negative and positive are not actually very useful words here. When we think about the thing we don't want, and the brain has to think about it more, the brain actually strengthens the neural pathway of the thing we don't want. Because the brain can't think in negatives, and the brain is all about patterns. The more you do something, the more you pattern it. The more you think something, the more you pattern it. The more of a pattern it is, the more of a narrative or a storyline of the mind it can become. I hate the stage, and I want to not hate it anymore. You're still thinking about hate. The brain is still wiring hatred for the stage. It's still wiring fear of overcoming whatever challenge you have right now. It's still wiring self-doubt. I want to not doubt myself anymore. What do you want instead of what you've currently got? When we've got that part of intentionality, then we can understand, okay, what I want instead is this thing framed in the affirmative, this thing that I do want. I want more of this. Now the brain can actually think about and start to pattern this over the old neural pathways. These new neural pathways get much stronger. And then when you apply that emotionality, that gets even faster because now I'm excited for it too. I'm excited about being in love with public speaking, for example. Okay, now you're really moving. It's much better than being frustrated because you hate public speaking and want to hate it less.
Yeah.
totally different mental patterns, totally different level of mental fitness, totally different level of emotional state and emotionality of ability to move through that state. Okay? So now with that understanding, to come back to the question, when you set the intention of wanting anabolic energy, of wanting something sustainable, of wanting to move towards what you want instead of what you've currently got, and you have the awareness of the sabotaging voice for what it is, which is the fact that it helped you so far with some things and is limiting you moving forward because there is even more available. Now you can access your wisest self. That wisest self will go through the process of AIDE, and then you work through the process. You do the consistent action regularly, proving to yourself internally and externally, and that can become your new reality. You know, I would never say to someone, stop doing the thing you think is making you successful right now. And instead I would ask, what if you could have all that success and more while loving life even more? And usually that's enough to get people to at least stop and go, oh, maybe I don't need to hate myself to be successful.
Right.
And hopefully we figure that out before we have so much buildup of dis-ease, because of that catabolic energy is creating dis-ease within us. We're eating ourselves up from within. That disease arises. That can be disease of the mind or of the body. Of the body, all kinds of things pop up. Chronic stress, so many things can pop up which create diseases of their own. Also be a disease of the mind, such as I just can't get out of this situation. And then, unfortunately, we're led to situations like that one Lewis described on his podcast where, someone just couldn't take it anymore. And that's disease of the mind. And it's, we can have the empathy for it, and then we should have empathy for ourselves, too. And that empathy means stop, take a pause, take a breather, and decide what you do want instead of what you've currently got.
I think that's such a huge insight, especially because sometimes maybe people maybe they don't instinctively go for the thing that they want in terms of when they're setting that goal, because they think, oh, that's not possible. That seems too far-fetched for me to, if they're in this really deep state of not enjoying some part of their life, to think I can enjoy it is a big leap for them. But at the same time, if they don't believe that that's possible, and that's why they're not saying they want it, that's worth looking at as well. Why do you not believe? And maybe if you were to start saying, that is what I want, it can start rewiring those neural pathways, like you said, and they can start going towards it. I think that's such a huge insight that people can apply, so that's really cool. I really wanted to understand a little bit more about how you think hypnotherapy and hypnosis plays into all of this. Obviously, it's something working very deeply with the subconscious mind, which I think I want to hear all your insights and perspectives on that and how that relates to the childhood stuff you mentioned as well. So I guess my question to you is, how do you think hypnotherapy kind of ties into all of this?
Yeah, okay, really interesting. So if we had a piece of paper, I would draw this for you. I work on multiple layers with folks that make things really interesting. So if we imagine a table, right, with 2 columns and 3 rows, okay? Column 1 is the internal, column 2 is the external. And then the 3 rows are your mental, your emotional, and your physical. Internal physical, I would be looking at your nervous system, where we'd be doing things like breath work. Now, if anyone's ever been to a really intense breath work session, they'll know that there's kind of this tingling all over the body, and you just feel totally different for this moment, like you've been kind of reset. Really, a good breath work is like hitting a reset button. That's why even pausing for 60 seconds, taking some nice big deep breaths, even that is like a mini reset button. Now, if you do a really intense breathwork session, you totally reset the nervous system. Why is it that you're not just fully healed and enlightened forever after one session? Because you go back to your normal life after that with all the same inputs. Your body, your nervous system, and the unconscious mind, which I would call the nervous system fundamentally, they're all taking in the same information, continuing to live through the same patterns, As a result, the same things get patterned, and the reset button didn't do anything except give you momentary relief. Really powerful. What are you now putting into the reset system? I use hypnotherapy as part of my suite of tools to work on the mental and especially on the emotional level of that internal, right? If we can reset your emotional state, and we can give you a new emotional state, and then we can help reset the nervous system, and now you're feeling a new emotional state with the reset nervous system, now the body is able to feel what it is like to be the different person that we're using the hypnotherapy to feel like. And you start to much more quickly pattern this new you that we're building. Hypnotherapy, I think, would be useful to explain because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it actually is, okay? Hypnotherapy really is all about, it's not like, normal therapy. Comparing a hypnotherapist and a therapist is a little bit like comparing a physiotherapist and a therapist, right? We're working on with fairly different things, and it's a fairly different practice. It's all about working on our state. Our state is essentially just however we are showing up as feeling right now. So anger is a state, fear is a state, calm is a state, confidence is a state, right? Gratitude, compassion, love, hatred, stress, these are all states. By that definition, we are never not in a state. I walked into this room curious. That's a state. I'm feeling a little tired. That's a state. You're nervous before walking on a stage. That's a state. You calm yourself down and feel even more capable. That's a state. Hypnotherapy is about getting into the states we want more of instead of the states we've currently got that are patterned at the moment, that are currently unhelpful to us, deciding and building the more helpful ones instead, patterning those so that they're easier to access. And if you do it at the right time and in the right way regularly enough, then that becomes your new reality. If you can reset your nervous system, then do it, then it becomes even more powerful, as another example. So it's all part of a process. So hypnotherapy is all about just moving states, changing your state from one state into another. This can get really deep on multiple levels. Okay, we can start talking about theta brainwaves if we want to, right? I was doing a group session the other day, and someone said to me the next day, she was wearing one of these health tracking devices, a wearable. I think it was an Oura ring, but a Whoop or whatever will do it too. And the app told her, "Did you just take a nap after the session?" And I was watching her. She was awake. Another way of describing it that I love that comes out of an organization called the Monroe Institute is body asleep, mind awake. The body isn't actually fully asleep. You are fully in control. There's a lot of myth about hypnosis and hypnotherapy because we envision like someone on a stage waving a little watch around. That's not what it is. It's really essentially all about the use of your language to help people get into an altered state, a state they want more of instead of what they've currently got. And that's basically what it is. It's a series of tools and processes and language that we use to do that, to unlock the power of the mind. Because if the mind is powerful enough to give you Crohn's disease, and the mind is powerful enough to make you healthy, wealthy, happy, create the life that you really want to, okay? Now, mind awake, body asleep. This person, I remember seeing them, they weren't even laying down. The others in the room were laying down. This person was sitting up, and you can see their eyes moving back and forth a whole bunch. This is a signal that you're in rapid eye movement. This is a signal that you're visualizing, that you're essentially moving into a deeper state, alpha eventually into theta wave brain state, I believe. And theta brainwave is when you're napping, is when you're asleep. Whether you're napping or it's at night, but that's when you're asleep. So if her Oura ring thinks she's taking a nap, really all that means is she moved into an altered state of awareness where her brainwaves were different and her body was responding differently. Her nervous system was more calm. And that's really what hypnotherapy is. It helps you get into that state so that in that state, we can do different things. We can give you more of what you've currently got. We can help your body pattern something new. And because that's essentially what it is, it's sort of, is it more complicated than that? Ish. It's also is kind of that simple. And it's so powerful because when you're in that state, now we can start to work on any processes we need to uncover old challenges, let them go, and replace them with new challenges so that the brain is layering new neural pathways over that. That's where it fits into kind of my whole thing, and that's why it's so powerful, is because you can so quickly get to the root cause of whatever the challenge is you're facing, right? Fear of being on stage, maybe that's because someone was used to being laughed at when they were a child, and now they want to remain invisible, and they're finding that their career is a bit stalled because they would be able to do better if they could sell on a stage or build their personal brand somehow by doing stuff like this. And people would never do what you're doing because they don't want to be seen. That's scary. Okay, well, what do you want instead of what you've currently got? And then we can go through the process. We've all got either a memory of or someone that we can think of that is our ideal for feeling the emotional state we want more of. We all can either envision someone who's fully confident or have had a time where we felt fully confident. And that's basically all we need to get you into an altered state where you feel fully confident. And then we can work with that, go through the process, and eventually that becomes patterned. And it becomes so much easier to access a version of yourself that's probably closer, because it's a creation mode experience. It is closer to the you that you are all along, that deep down we all have access to, that we just don't act like. We all are leaders deep down. Our truest, most essential, most loving self is accessible deep down, and we just don't act like that person very much. And that is how I use hypnotherapy to help folks as part of the programs that I put together, right? Is one piece of how do we become more, to answer the question, how do we become more of that leader we were always meant to be more of?
I love that. And it's the uncovering of any other layers that we've maybe put on or have been put onto us throughout the years that says that we're not that. That tells us that we can't be who we are. One thing I find really interesting is like the idea that kids are predominantly in these different brainwave states. And when you're a kid, you're in Theta, the daughter subconscious is wide open. You're like a sponge, and you used to receive everything. I think, from my understanding, that's why we have all of these deeply programmed beliefs, is because when we were so open and receptive to learning about the world and what it is and who we are as part of it, we took on these certain beliefs. And it seems like hypnotherapy is a really great way of being able to use those same brainwave states consciously in the container to be able to then reprogram that and to just change some of those beliefs or unhelpful patterns.
Yeah, that's a great summary. I love that.
Amazing. And the other thing that that you mentioned that I really wanted to dig into is this idea of flow. And I guess maybe if you could describe what your understanding is of flow as well, but I also love to hear how that is woven into this whole process and the brainwave states of flow as well. Like, what is your understanding of flow and how can people tap into that more?
Yeah, so flow is a word coined by Mikhail, and I can never pronounce his last name.
Something Eastern European, right?
It's super long Eastern European name, yeah, exactly. And he was doing some research into something we've known about for a long time. So an example that I love is a theory of the etymology of the Spanish word ole. For a good chunk of Spain's history, southern Spain was essentially a Muslim state. The kind of Muslim forces came up through northern Africa, and there are a lot of mosques and a lot of Muslims currently in southern Spain as a result, all this time later. And there would be traditional dancers that were what we would now call in flow. That they would just be doing their thing, and it would feel so magical to watch. And people would say, the theory is people would say that they can see Allah, they can see God in this dancing, in how incredible this flow was, the way people would be so effortlessly creative. It would be so inspiring. And we all know what that's like. And that the word Olay came from the word Allah. That's the theory. And we all know what it's like to be witnessing something. Someone's just in their creative flow, and we're like, whoa, that's crazy. It's so cool, and it's really inspiring. And we feel more creative as a result because that creativity is contagious. It's contagious energy. So flow is essentially that. It's that creativity where you're so in the zone that everything else falls away. Mikhail was, the way he was researching it and why he called it flow was he would speak to athletes, he would speak to people who were kind of top of their game, and so many of them would use water language to describe the senses falling away, to describe being so fully absorbed in what they're currently doing. It is as though the current is just taking you forth. That current, as in water. Being in the flow is almost like, and I sort of almost have the spiritual interpretation of it as well, where when we're in flow, it's like source is just flowing through us. We don't need to decide what to do next. It just happens. It's like something takes over our body, and the current is just taking us forward. So what happens when you're in flow, like 8 or 9 different things happen, including a sense of time disappears, right? So time distortion happens, which happens a lot when people are in altered states of awareness as well. You just forget that time is passing. You forget that you're a material being. You forget about your worries and your needs, right? So, maybe lunch has gone by and you've just forgotten. You haven't eaten anything, right? That happens a lot. The list is super long and I haven't memorized it. But it's exactly that. It's just like if you forget about the human experience. You're not trying, you just keep going until flow ends. And that happens when something distracts you, or you're like, your body really takes over, like you really need to pee. You probably needed to pee for like half an hour or whatever, but you're just going. It's a sense of total enjoyment taking over. And it makes you really effective when you're doing something work-related and you really enjoy it. So if we're talking about altered states of awareness, moving someone into the state they want more of and making it happen effortlessly and patterning it, that is moving someone into flow. When someone is going through an altered state of awareness, they're in flow in that state. And if we can apply that to the things that we love doing, or even things we don't really love doing, but what we need to do anyway, right? You can fall in love with tasks that you don't really love doing in like a workplace. Get yourself into flow, a state of flow. Get it done, boom, boom, boom. I don't know about you, but I have lots of times where I'm like, I really don't want to do this thing. I put it off. And then I'm like, cool, 1 hour, this thing's happening in an hour. Just get all of it done. And it's like I'm in flow doing the things I really don't enjoy. But it's something about the achievement is enough to get me in flow. Something about ticking it off my to-do list is enough to get me in flow. And so we can bang out all of these tasks we don't want to do. Even better, what if we can apply that to something we've been procrastinating that we do want to do, but there's a limiting belief. I'm not good enough to be a writer, so I'm not going to sit down and write this book, says the mental narrative. What if you could get yourself into a state of flow, where as a result, those sabotaging voices have fallen away? I'm focused, I'm in this state of flow, fully focused on this thing, and it's as if I'm just channeling the words and I'm just typing. An hour goes by, I come out of like what's essentially trance, and I'm like, oh, I wrote 4 pages. That was you being in flow. That was being in a flow state. Flow state is just being so fully absorbed in something. I say just, that just is a lot of heavy lifting and actually really diminishes that. So I'm going to remove the word just. It is as simple as feeling so much love, inspiration, and creativity that you're taken over by whatever you're doing. And the same way you can move into a state of calm or confidence or courage, you can move into a state of flow. And ultimately, how much would you be in your wiser self, what we might call your sage voice, as opposed to a sabotaging voice? How much would you be in that? how amazing would it be to be in that by moving yourself into a flow state whenever you wanted? And that's ultimately what I help people do, whether our task is something public speaking related, right? So if I'm doing public speaking training, or I'm taking someone through my powerful leaders program. It's a program I'm designing for like specifically building up your power, your personal power, and your understanding of power dynamics, so that you can build your own state of flow. All of it is building state of flow, so that when you show up, you're able to achieve more of what you want, right? We all have goals, things we want more of, things we'd like to achieve. And I'm so used, because I've been around entrepreneurs pretty much my whole career, I'm so used to being around people with crazy ambition. And because we can be our own greatest enemy with these saboteurs, if we can move into flow state instead, that ambition becomes really achievable. And that's what excites me most, because what if you're a purpose-led, heart-led person who is ready to take consistent action, wants to, is able to, and you're able to get out of your own way, love showing up, being in front of other people, understand what the world demands of you and how to move through that, and keep yourself in flow the whole time. This is a really weird combination of things. Oh, and by the way, having fun the whole time too, because it can become really rigid and stiff. Like conversations like this can run the risk of just being so like, this is what you should do, step by step. This is bad, this is good, meh. And we're all kind of tired of hearing it, right? There's so many podcasts now. I love the style of conversation. And I'm always very aware of like, how can we have more fun with it, right? Because even the idea of moving into a state of flow can sound really boring if I keep calling it the state of flow, right? It's like, what we're really doing is we're having a bunch of fucking fun. We're having a bunch of fun doing things that we love, overcoming challenges so that we're no longer limited, and therefore making more money, being visible in front of others, getting that promotion, making more sales, building a more of a brand, whatever it is, whatever you want, and having fun the whole time. How cool is that? The ego wants us to stay down here, and that tightness, that rigidity is stagnation, and stagnation is death.
Right. It seems as well like, thinking back to my first question about self-doubt and how to overcome it, it seems like for me personally, whenever I'm in a state of flow, I don't have any of that self-doubt coming up. Or if it does, it like comes and goes in little whispers. It's nowhere near as loud. You know, if I think about, I love writing movie scripts. And when I'm doing that, it's the same thing. Like before you're doing it, you're like, I've got all these other things I have to do. Like, why should I put the time into it? And I'm like, all right, let me just type a few words. Like, that's all I'm going to do. And then as soon as I get into it, it's like, boom, flow state. And maybe if before when I'm thinking about it, there's a voice, it's like, but it's not going to be good. It's going to be too difficult to do it. Don't do it, whatever. But when I'm in that flow state, it's just so seamless, and that voice isn't there.
What kind of scripts do you write?
It's like fiction, feature film scripts.
Cool. What genre?
All sorts.
Okay.
I'm writing like a drama kind of comedy at the moment. But recently I wrote like a sci-fi. Again, like speaking about fun, that's just my way of just like playing, just seeing where it goes, you know.
And what stops you from doing that when you want to do it?
I think the thing is around, like, it's not making money at the moment. That's not the way I make money. And I've noticed myself prioritizing, like I also do, like video editing is my main source of income. And I'm
You've also got like a cacao brand as well, or something, don't you?
Yeah, I have a cacao business I'm starting as well. That's super fun. And it's the same with the cacao brand and the filmmaking, which are like my real passions. I noticed that I don't give as much energy as I'd like to those because I have to, because I'm choosing to make money and to prioritize the thing that's making money. So I think that's the only reason I'm not spending more time doing that. Because if it, I would love to just be writing and, ideating the cacao brand and making movies and stuff all the time. And there's a deep part of me that knows that that's going to happen at some point, and I'm always working towards that. But at the moment, I notice that it's like a frustration of mine. I feel like I've got so many other things to do except from the things that I really love.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where things actually become really interesting because I actually think in your case, moving into flow, it will always help. The main challenge with in your case sounds like it's alignment, right? So frustration is a really important emotion because, again, none of these things are bad, right? These are all signals. Your body is sending you a signal there. You're frustrated with you've got so many things to do. Obviously, you need to keep some level of, I guess, physical safety, some level of safety net. What is your long-term goal there, right? You've got the cacao brand, you want to do more writing, you're a video editor by day, you've also got this podcast, so that's a fourth thing in the mix. You've got a personal life, right? So that's always in the mix. Actually, we can use a little hypnosis technique. This isn't really hypnosis; it's more of a coaching technique. But I learned it during my training. I find really interesting. So, okay, we're gonna weigh two things together. Okay, what is more important to you, your video editing work or your cacao brand?
Cacao brand.
Okay, what is more important to you, your podcast or your cacao brand? Okay. What is more important to you, your filmmaking or your cacao brand?
My instinct is filmmaking.
Okay. What's more important to you, your filmmaking or your video editing?
It's filmmaking.
Okay. What's more important to you, your podcast or your video editing work?
Podcast.
Okay. We now have your criteria. We have your order of preference, right? Filmmaking, then cacao brand, then podcast, then video editing work. In that order, ascending to descending, that's one list. Where does your time go currently? Most amount of time to least amount of time, ascending to descending.
It's like 90% video editing.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'd probably say the next one is filmmaking that I put most time into.
Mm-hmm.
And then more recently it's been on the podcast, but usually it would be the cacao brand.
Okay. So it's not quite the reverse of your criteria,
exactly,
but the fact that you say 90% is really interesting actually as well, because some folks, they're putting equal time in, and that's kind of frustrating them. But actually 90% is a really huge number. So because I'm also looking at things from the business perspective, so this is how we really empower you, right? Is by going through AIDE, right? What is it that you want instead of what you've currently got? 90% is a huge chunk of your time. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. And this is out of, how many hours of work would you say, a week would you say you work, including all these things?
Let me think here. I would probably maybe between 30 and 40, I want to say.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay. And with your video editing work, are you only editing or are you also getting new work? So does that include winning editing contracts, finding clients, things like that?
Mostly the actual editing itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so work kind of comes to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of have, I suppose you have flexibility depending on you to actually, either what you can do is you can decrease the number of hours you're doing the things that are lower down in your criteria list, or you can increase the number of hours you're working. You can either increase the size of the pie, or you can change the chunks of the pie. If we wanted to replace that frustration with a constant sense of flow, right? What would be your first instinct as far as what to change about the way you currently structure your life?
I think what I would probably have to do would be do the things that are high priority for me, the filmmaking, the cacao, the podcast, is do those first. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that the video editing, because I prioritize, it's all right, I've kind of got to get this done, I've got deadlines and clients and stuff, is that I do that first. And it's not something for me where I can kind of switch off my brain and just do it. It's I'm involved in that process. It's quite mentally intensive, I guess you could say, for the work that I'm doing. And then usually after I've done that, however many hours of work, and there's always seems like there's more that I've got to do, I don't feel like I have as much energy or mental clarity or focus or enthusiasm to do those other things, because I've kind of drained my reservoir, so to speak, by doing the video editing work. So when you ask that question about what the way I structured my life, I think that would probably have to be the main shift for me, would be those things that I do prioritize is doing those first, so that I can really give them my full attention, presence, and focus, and actually do them.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just skipping.
What time do you start in the morning?
So I usually, I'll get up, journal a little bit, do meditation, then work out. So by the time I'm working, it's usually like, and then eat some food. It's maybe like 11 o'clock by the time I'm working.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. You say you're more of a night owl?
In some respects, like I'm very creative at night.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm very creative, but I prefer. It's a tricky one. I kind of experiment with both.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm similar. Sometimes I feel a wave of creative energy at night.
Right.
The reason I ask is because what you're describing is essentially front-loading your day, front-loading the most challenging tasks, the most creatively challenging tasks, and the things that are most interesting to you. And the reason why that's important is because the morning tends to be when we're most stimulated. It tends to be but then once we get too late into the day, it's sort of all about the chemicals in your body, right? So going back to this table I mentioned earlier, we're now kind of talking about like the other parts of your physical, or we're almost in a way talking about your mental, so that you're working with your body as well, which is your habits and how you show up day to day, okay? The body is sort of, and the brain are most active in the morning, and then it dips sort of early afternoon, like lunchtime. And then that's one of the reasons why we can have that post-lunch slump. It's partly because we've eaten food, and our body is now in rest and digest because we've eaten food. But you add to that the fact that that's usually when our body is most tired. Historically, traditionally, it's when we would nap, right? Which is why some cultures have like siesta, right? A fun little side tangent story. When I was 18, I lived in Nepal for a few months, and we would be driving down these roads, and it's really it's like 2-lane cliffside roads. And middle of the day, these truck drivers would park up, so there'd be basically 1 lane left, park up against the edge of where if something had happened, their thing would fall off the cliff, and they'd be napping.
Wow.
Because it's siesta, it's hot, it's siesta time. You know, they obviously don't call it siesta, but they'd be napping. And, you know, something interesting to me about respecting the way the body works and its desires and its natural rhythms. And one of those natural rhythms is in the morning, we are full of creative energy, and then actually after that slump, it kind of goes back up, which is why some of us have that at night. So you have a couple of options. Either like you do the stuff that is mindless and easy when the body is at its most tired. Now, with me, if that's a task I don't want to do, I'm not doing it at that time because I just can't get myself to do it. I find it really tough to get into flow during those moments. So I do my best to front load the creative things I'm doing early in the morning and then do things like calls later in the day, and then maybe go back to more deep work if I'm working in the evening again. I'm the kind of person who will work kind of 50 to 60 hours a week because I always have, and as long as you're in flow and loving it, you're okay. I recently overcame a pretty deep bout of burnout, and that was partly because of what I was doing, how much I was doing. It was also because of how I was showing up. And I do believe that if you're in flow, then you can work really hard, right? Athletes constantly in flow, they work incredibly hard. Rarely would they say they're mentally burnt out, right? Because so much of their routine is about being the best of the best. So they're doing the physiotherapy stuff. They're resting on purpose all the time, and they work really, really hard. And we can do the same thing if we're behind a desk. It's simply about understanding your criteria. So we've understood your priorities, right? Your priorities are your filmmaking and writing creative stuff, and then a brand that you want to build. And only then left after is it basically the work that's kind of day to day. And and then we can look at what are the results that each are getting you, right? So one thing pays the bills, that maybe changes your criteria a little bit. That might mean that how can you reduce that from 90% to 80%?
Right.
Could be a simple question.
Mm.
Now, or how can you increase the hours from 40 to 50?
Yeah.
Could you? Maybe that would burn you out, and the answer is no, in which case you have to respect that. Is it simply a case of moving your day around? So when I say all that to you, now I'd love to know kind of how does that show up in your body, right? How do you feel? How does that land? Because that will give us more signals.
Yeah, I think that for me the one that resonates most is increasing the amount that I work, but the only thing, because I'm doing enough of the video editing stuff, but I feel like I really want to be doing more of the brand and the filmmaking and the podcast. So I think adding hours of those doesn't seem at all exhausting. Like, that seems exciting more than anything.
Good.
I think though, changing the time that I do it is probably one of the key factors with what we've discussed. Because usually it's like I'd have done my day of work and then it's 6 p.m. let's say, and I feel like I've done what I needed to do for the day, and then I'm like, all right, let me see what energy I've got left for these things. And inevitably it's much harder to focus on those things and really enjoy it as much because I feel more drained. So I think adding more hours and then doing just like you said, kind of front loading those in the morning, I think that would be really helpful. And I think even just the kind of mental undercurrent of that is I am prioritizing these things because they're the first things that I'm doing. Like, if I'm focusing on prioritizing the video editing by making it the first thing I do, I think inevitably I'm going to create more of that, because what am I telling my brain? This is the priority, this is the focus, this is what we do.
Exactly, right? Where attention goes, energy flows. The first thing, the first priority, the first attention, and the thing treated as both the most urgent as well as the most important is the video editing, where attention goes, energy flows. That's where your attention went. That's what you end up creating more of.
Right.
Whether through some sort of energetic and spiritual mechanism, or just through the fact that that's the way you'll act, right? Or both. So I think that's a really powerful insight. Awareness, intention, direction. You've got that. Emotionality. How do you want to feel whilst you're going down this new path, right? This new day-to-day structure that you've just designed.
I want to feel inspired, creatively fulfilled, in flow, joyful, excited. I want to feel unlimited, like there's unlimited potentials. I really love and enjoy my life. I think like a sense of fulfillment and contentment there. And I think the main one is just like inspired. I feel like that's the big one that comes through for me.
When have you been most inspired in the past? Can you think of a time? Well, actually, I should say, knowing what I know about you, and everyone should ask themselves the question this way: of all the times that you've been inspired and felt the way you just described, felt incredibly inspired and therefore motivated, what is the time that most powerfully comes to your mind when you think about times you've been inspired?
I think a big part of it is like when I'm writing movie scripts.
Okay.
Yeah, like, or when I've got a film idea, like, just like sometimes I'll just, like, I went to see Max Richter in concert a few weeks ago, and it was amazing. And I was like, I think I was in a flow state. Well, I'm almost sure I was watching that, because it was the music was just so beautiful and so entrancing. Like you said, it's like infectious. The flow state that all the musicians are in on stage then seeps out to everyone else. And I had this like movie idea, just fully formed, like came out, it was like boom. And then over the next kind of like week or so, I was like experimenting, making the whole thing with AI, like AI generated images and videos.
Okay. And
I made the whole thing within like 3 days, like a full short film, and it was like boom. And the feeling of that was so inspiring. Like when I speak about that feeling of being inspired, it kind of like that's the one that immediately comes to mind for me.
That's a really powerful image, because you say it comes to mind, but it also comes to your body. Visibly, your body changed as you were describing it. You were in movement, and like these are all signals that this is a really deep, emotional, resonant experience for you. That was a state that you were fully in and worked really well. it really worked for you. A question comes to mind as well. When are you having the most fun?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Honestly, like, I'm having the most fun when I'm in new places with new people. Well, not new people. New places with good people. Like if I'm like on a trip with friends or something, or like I'm in nature and I'm like, or the thing that comes to mind for me is like collaborating with people. You know, with the filmmaking stuff. If I'm like writing a script with a person or like collaborating with someone and we're coming up with ideas, that for me is so fun.
Have you ever experienced a time where you've been traveling or exploring new things, new places with good people, and you've been creatively inspired?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Those two very much like merge. Yeah.
Out of all of those times, what is the most powerful one that you notice comes up when you want to
Like
experience
a
it?
specific
A specific
time.
memory, yeah.
I think like I went on like a men's retreat a couple of years ago, and that was just such a powerful experience for me. And going through that experience with those guys, I was like, I want to tell this story somehow, like this experience that I'm having. I want other people to be able to experience this, and like as the follow-on from that, like now I've written like a feature film script about going to a men's retreat, like that kind of experience. So I think that's one example that comes to mind for me.
And if we had the time, I would use that now to take you into that state, so that could be something you'd experience, more often.
Right.
Because you meditate quite a bit, thinking about the emotionality, right? You have the awareness of what you want to change day to day, right? We've looked at these criteria. You've got the intention and the direction, right? Thing you want to change, how you're going to do it. And then now you've got the emotionality. I would recommend to you, my challenge to you would be to meditate on exactly that experience and how it felt in all of your senses. What are you seeing? What are you hearing, if anything? What are you feeling in your heart as well as physically on your body? How are you breathing? What's your posture like? So everything about your body. Are there any tastes? Are there any smells even? So in all of the senses, what is that like? Really deeply meditate on that, re-experience that. That begins to pattern, and there are techniques we can use to help bring that pattern into kind of, when your eyes are awake and you're going about your daily life. The more you experience that, the more you have access to that emotionality. And you can apply that emotionality to this new awareness, intention, direction that you've set. And that will catalyze it. Because now you're not only setting a new, let's say, daily schedule for when you do your work, you're also feeling a certain way while you're doing it and while you're setting it, which makes you more likely to follow it, right? Because it's easier to put stuff in your calendar and then just ignore it and not do it. So you're both more likely to actually set it, to actually do it, and to have fun and enjoy it while you're doing it. I think fun is so underrated. Like, why do we get into doing anything that we do? Sometimes it's because we have this skill, it's valuable, people are paying us for it, and then we get into the routine of being paid for this thing, right? A lot of people's jobs are like that, and I'm not going to knock it. I'm going to say, how can you instill more fun into that? Or recognize when you're done with that you're done with that, right? If that is the case. And so if you want to be filmmaking while working on a brand or two on the side full time, maybe the goal is over the course of however much time you want to put into it, transitioning out of the day-to-day work you currently do and making that be the thing you do, right? And maybe that's easier said than done. Maybe it takes time. But remember, emotionality is the catalyst. So if that's the goal you really want, now you have the emotionality to get there even more quickly.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's going to be huge for me. I'm going to have to journal on that and start applying it in the meditations as well. And I think huge for everyone that's listening as well. And I guess, is there anything that you feel like wants to come through you that you want to share with the world, let's say? Or it doesn't have to be the world. There could be one person that's listening, but anything that's coming through you that you feel like you want to share?
There's a saying that I share often with people when thinking about false narratives. We've talked a lot today about the storylines of the mind. Human beings choose what they wish to be true and label that as reality. I'm not 100% sure why this is coming through right now, but so much of what holds us back is a narrative in the mind. And we think this is truth. Remember, things with the mind are lies, emotions are truth. We need to accept material reality for what it is so that we can get on with life. Accepting it does not mean fully believing it. Accepting it does not mean allowing yourself to be limited by that which isn't even physical. How much of your life are you making up for the ego's benefit and not for yours? If we really believe that person meant to hurt us, that thing is against us, that becomes our reality. And when it's your reality, it's much, much more difficult to unlearn, to learn something else instead. I really want people to be able to apply these things to themselves, right? I run, I can run stuff for companies. I run high-ticket stuff for individuals, group stuff. I used to do a lot of events. I would love to get back to doing group events. At the moment, I'm not running any. I might run a few this year. But the most accessible thing anyone can do is to look at what they can do for themselves right now. And most of my life, I've needed that. And so I think what's coming forward for me is, what can I share that is something anyone can apply? A lot of what we talked about is part of that. We've walked through the process of that, right? Of making, whether it's a big change or a small change, you can use the same process. But when we understand, if you can really accept and be happy with and love and experience the understanding that we choose what we wish to be true, and that we may just be labeling this reality based on that choice, then we can also make a different choice. What are you choosing to see as reality right now that you actually don't think serves you to make that choice? It might serve you out of fear. Does it serve you out of creation, out of love? And if the answer is again no, then that's maybe a wake-up call.
That's really powerful, man. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you're excited about in the future coming up?
Oh man, I mean, loads of stuff. I'm relaunching my practice and my main sort of offering. So that's really fun. I may do some events and retreats this year again, but a little bit different than before, more wellness focused. I'm launching a group coaching cohort for later this year, a 5-month cohort, where we go through power dynamics, how people will manipulate you and how to deal with that. Public speaking, it's so much of the showing up as your authentic self and being able to maintain that, working on both the inner and the outer, the internal, the external. I love all of that. As within, so without. Everything that's exciting me coming up is opportunities to see people shine. Just stuff that I really love.
And where should people go to find all of your offerings?
At the moment, my LinkedIn or my website, which are both just my name, 7jacobs.com, or my name, 7jacobs on LinkedIn, is the easiest place to find me. All my other stuff is a bit outdated at the moment.
Cool.
But thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate speaking to you, and it's great to see you going through the process too, right? I have a lot of respect and appreciation for you for putting yourself forward, for organizing stuff like this and trying to pay it forward to others, and this is one way you're paying it forward to others. And also for your vulnerability and your ability to articulate the challenges you're going through and to work with me on this process. Super cool, man. I'm super excited for you as well.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it so much, man. This is awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, bro. Fuck yeah.
There we go.
That was awesome, man. Wow.
I was so tired. That was not me.
Tell.
That was not me at my best. That was me. I was like, fuck.
Dude, I felt like you were just flowing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
I'm getting back to it after being burnt out for ages.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't feel fully present. My mind was not in flow the way I like it to be.
If
I
that's
woke
you
up a
not
bit
in flow,
late.
I can't wait to see you in flow.
I woke up a bit late and stuff, and so yeah, today I'm like trying to get my eyes open, but
No,
but yeah, man, I really appreciate you putting it together. It's really cool.